Facts First presents. Divers explored the Titanic for the first time in 14 years, and they made a haunting discovery. The RMS Titanic embarked on her maiden voyage from Southampton on the south coast of England on April 10, 1912. The first port of call was the northern coast of France. Next, she sailed to Queenstown, which is now called Cobh in County Cork on the southeast of Ireland. After picking up more passengers there, the Titanic set off to cross the Atlantic. The ship left port at 1:30 p.m. April 11th, but never made it to New York. 3 days after the ship set off for New York, it struck an iceberg around 375 miles south of Newfoundland. The ship hit the iceberg at 11:40 p.m., but the impact didn't breach the ship's hull. It did bend the steel plates in the vessels, which created gaps in between them. 5 of the ship's watertight sections began to fill with water. The ship was designed to sail with 4 of those compartments failing, but not 5. And that was the beginning of the end of the Titanic. It took only 2.5 hours from the time of the collision for the ship to sink. There were 2,224 people on board the vessel that was said to be unsinkable. Over 1,500 of them died. Some died after plunging into the freezing waters. Some were still on the ship when it fell 12,500 feet to the bottom of the Atlantic. White Star Line built the Titanic. They wanted to build the largest ship on the planet, which would also be the most extravagant for first-class passengers. The construction began on the last day of March 1909 in the Irish city of Belfast. It took 2 years to build the ship. The hull was made up of 2,000 steel plates that were 6 feet across, 30 feet long, and 1.5 inches thick. They weighed a total of 3 tons. Building the ship itself was dangerous, and 9 ironworkers died just during the construction. Another 246 were injured. The interior of the first-class and second-class sections was designed to look like a grand hotel. First-class passengers were able to enjoy facilities such as a gym, a swimming pool, and a Turkish bath. They were able to dine in style on delicacies beyond their wildest imaginations. The third-class passengers did not have access to all areas, but their accommodations were still much better than most other ships. When the ship was complete, she was 880 feet from bow to stern. There were only 20 lifeboats in place, which could hold only 1,178 people, despite the fact that there were over 2,200 on board. It was believed that since the ship was considered unsinkable, there was really no need to litter the decks with so many lifeboats. There were 14 wooden lifeboats, 4 collapsible boats, and 2 cutters. If the ship held 64 lifeboats, which the deck could have carried, over 4,000 people could have been saved. Sadly, White Star Line believed only 20 lifeboats were necessary, which is why so many people died. The regulations at the time required ships of the size to carry only 16 boats with a capacity of 990. After the tragic sinking, those regulations were changed. Edward Smith was the ship's senior captain. There were 885 crew members on board. Only 23 of them were women, 66 worked on deck, and 325 worked below as engineers and stokers. There were also 8 musicians on the ship who went down in history even though they died. When the ship began to sink, first-class passengers were the first to be put on lifeboats. It was supposed to be women and children first. The richest man on the ship, John Jacob Astor IV, was traveling with his wife, Madeline. Benjamin Guggenheim was also on board with his mistress, Leontine Aubert, and her maid. During the sinking, the women made it, but the men and their staff did not. In 1985, a French-American team led by Robert Ballard of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution discovered what was left of the Titanic. They used a remote-controlled sub called Argo to take photos of the ship that were published all over the world. In 2005, the crew of a mini-submarine, Limiting Factor, reached a depth of 12,500 feet to get a look at the mangled remains. Using their high-tech 4K cameras, they had some stunning photos to share. Victor Vescova was aboard another expedition in August of 2019. It had been 14 years since the last time the ship was photographed, and the team found something incredibly shocking. Divers explored the Titanic for the first time in 14 years and made a haunting discovery. The Titanic was quickly disappearing. Patrick Leahy, a member of the expedition and the president of the company who owns the Limiting Factor, sent out a press release from the ship saying, "The most fascinating aspect was seeing how the ocean is consuming the Titanic. and returning to its elemental form while providing refuge for a remarkably diverse number of animals. One part of the ship that has disappeared is the captain's bathtub. It can be seen in the older photos, but not the images that were taken in 2019. It's believed that the ocean's currents and the corrosive action of salt water and bacteria have been eating the metal away and contributing to its disappearance. Eventually, there will be nothing left of the RMS Titanic. Subscribe for more.